One of the most hyped games ever was Cyberpunk 2077, only for it to be released in December of 2020 and for it to be a massive flop. No matter whether or not you was interested in Cyberpunk, you knew that it did not go down well. It completely took over the whole internet no matter which platform you were using. And this raises the question of whether or not Cyberpunk 2077 has a future. And this is exactly what we're going to be going through in today's video. But before I do get into the video, if you do want to see any more content from me, or maybe just talk a bit more in depth about this subject, then I am streaming over on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and at the minute we're playing a variety of different games. So if any of that interests you, there is a link in the description down below. Getting back into the video, it goes without saying that Cyberpunk didn't go down well with a number of bugs and glitches. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One just wasn't up to a good standard, which did come down to Sony even removing it from the PlayStation Store with huge amounts of refunds going across both consoles, and there is even talks of a class action lawsuit against CD Projekt Red. The game really couldn't have had a worse release, but today we're not talking about the downfall of CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077. Today we are talking about 2021 and the potential uprising that Cyberpunk could have. I'm going to be breaking down all the news about the future of Cyberpunk 2077, and I'm going to be throwing it over to you guys because I'm curious whether or not you think Cyberpunk 2077 could be classed as a great game in the future. So starting off, CD Projekt Red have always planned to release DLC for Cyberpunk 2077. They've been saying this many times in interviews, Night City Wires, and even social media posts. A big selling point that CD Projekt Red was using at the beginning when they were hyping up Cyberpunk was that there will be no microtransactions. This news went down very well with fans, but unfortunately it meant that CD Projekt Red had to think of other ways to make this business more sustainable. So that's why they also mentioned there will be free as well as paid DLC in the future. This was also followed up on the release of Cyberpunk 2077 because we got a trailer which was there for the last bit of the hype. For anyone that didn't pre-order or was looking to buy this game, CD Projekt Red were pushing out this trailer which would hopefully push them over the edge to finally get that purchase. CD Projekt Red have always put in little secrets or even hidden messages into their trailers. Many players noticed that this release trailer was no different. In one single frame at the end of this trailer where you see the pre-order screen, you will see a message from the CD Projekt Red team. I will leave this on screen for you to read. It can be difficult with the colors on the bright yellow background, but as a quick basic overview, it talks about the long wait of Cyberpunk 2077. It mentions the launch date and the excitement back in Cyberpunk. There's a request for once you play or even finish the game to tell CD Projekt Red about who your V was and their story on social media. And the whole reason that I'm reading all of this is there's also mention of free DLC coming in early 2021. It says, we'll first be kicking off our free DLC program in early 2021. Just like The Witcher 3, expect an assortment of free DLC packs to begin hitting Night City, dropping a bunch of cool stuff that will inject even more life into the world of the dark future. Now bear in mind that this trailer was the release of Cyberpunk 2077, and especially with the heartfelt messages, I can't imagine they anticipated the backlash that came from this release. It is still possible that we could see free DLC that could drop in January or February, but CD Projekt Red might want to focus on releasing their promised patches first to get the game in a working state on all platforms. If that's the case, don't expect the first DLC until late February, March at the earliest, which still falls within the early 2021 window. The thing is, CD Projekt Red entered damage control, and by far they're not out of it yet, so they're probably going to be working on patches before releasing any other content. What also backs this up is CD Projekt Red even held a conference call with investors and members of the financial media addressing the troubled launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Someone does raise a question about DLC coming to the game in the next 2 or 3 years. Adam responds, and I'm definitely not going to be saying his second name because I definitely cannot pronounce it, so we're just going to be sticking to Adam. But Adam says this: actually, to be honest, it's too early to judge at the moment. Please let us handle the situation and please let us make some more assessments. It's still ahead of us, so we don't know yet. We are still focused on improving Cyberpunk and we'll discuss it early next year, which highlights their main priority is just fixing Cyberpunk. And the good thing is that CD Projekt Red never revealed an exact date in which they were going to reveal new content. Yes, I imagine there was a rough timeline in place, but they never pushed it to the public. Game companies always consider time for games after launch for bug fixing. Not one single game out there has been released bug free. and everyone working in the gaming industry understands this. But let's be honest, whatever time they did plan to use for bug fixing is probably being extended. As for the promised expansions, those have no concrete release date. Whatever plan CD Projekt Red had for it is probably being pushed back slightly, as we've just mentioned. But if we were to move on to a bit of speculation as well as some facts backing it, we can look at some of the content that we could potentially be getting. Feel free to disagree in the comment section down below, but free DLC is most likely going to be cosmetics, being items of clothing, new customization styles, or even potentially, and this is very much pushing, we could very well see something that's not a cosmetic, but maybe we can get some side jobs. But this would be nothing major. The Witcher 3 had a decent amount of free DLC. CD Projekt Red announced that this will be putting out 16 pieces of free DLC content following the game's release. And with CD Projekt Red also talking about The Witcher 3, how they've learned from it, and they're also going to be bringing in similar type of content, we can look at The Witcher 3 and assume what The Witcher 3 got could be very similar to what Cyberpunk's gonna get. So when looking at The Witcher 3, we see content such as armor, horse gear, beards, hairstyles, character skins, Witcher contracts, and even weapon sets. And I reckon we'll be getting something very similar for free DLC with Cyberpunk. So this is new items of clothing for V and other characters, new weapon skins, new vehicles, and new side jobs. Paid DLC will be coming to the game, but so far we have no teasers with the hidden messages, or at least the messages that have been found so far. But just like the free DLC, it's fair to assume that everything has been pushed back slightly so CD Projekt Red can put some more time into bug fixes. But when comparing free to paid DLC is going to be so much bigger. You're looking at around 8 to 10 hours of gameplay, which has also been backed by a narrative. We're not talking about 8 hours here of just being side jobs, each one being completely separate from the other. We're talking about potentially quite a few different side jobs being added, but also a narrative alongside it. And that's all that can be really said about it, because we do not have any other information. With all of this, CD Projekt Red still haven't brought out a statement to talk about the early 2021 release. At no point have they said that it's going to be pushed back to late 2021, so it's still looking likely that we're going to get content early 2021. As we are talking about the future of Cyberpunk 2077 and CD Projekt Red, we've obviously got to be talking about multiplayer. And to be honest, I don't really like talking about content that's years and years away when we have hardly no information about it. But already questions have been raised whether or not this is going to be pushed back, whether or not it's even going to be released. And if I do completely remove anything mentioning multiplayer in this video, I know I'm just going to be getting comments in the comment section down below. So before Cyberpunk 2077 was released, we did hear about Cyberpunk Multiplayer being in the works, and CD Projekt Red even confirmed it. It is a separate AAA project, and CD Projekt Red have said before that they're looking for a 2022 release, but with no specific date. In a conference call with investors and members of the financial media, this question was raised about Cyberpunk Multiplayer. Adam responds by saying, "First and foremost, we haven't confirmed any date yet, and as I said before, it's hard to judge now. We are in a situation which was not planned. We'll have to reassess where we are, and that's the plan for January." CD Projekt Red have always talked about their priority being single player. They wanted to release Cyberpunk 2077, release the free DLC, release the paid DLC, and then after all of that's done, that's when they can release multiplayer. That was always their plan. Multiplayer was always years away, and yeah, what happens now might have an effect on in the future, but at the same time, it doesn't matter too much because a specific date was never promised. We have no real information about multiplayer, just that it's in the works and it's a separate AAA release. So this is what's been talked about so far with the future of CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk. The big question now is, will it be enough to pull players back? There's reports out there of Cyberpunk 2077 lost almost 80% of its active players since launch. Cyberpunk 2077 loses 79% of their player base in a month. Cyberpunk 2077 player counts have dropped 3 times faster than The Witcher 3. And to be honest, most will never ever come back. The thing is though, this isn't just because Cyberpunk had a rough start. This is 99% of games. It's just the fact that Cyberpunk did have a rough start that is what has accelerated the rate. Some like to point out the famous No Man's Sky, and point out when it was released there was so much hype for the game, but the game flopped on release because it could not deliver on the promises, very similar to Cyberpunk. But No Man's Sky pulled themselves out of the dirt and grew bigger and better, except they didn't. No Man's Sky was released on the 9th of August 2016, and when looking at the Steam charts, it never hit a higher peak or even average players than the release of the game at the beginning. Now this is Steam charts, but you can look at Google Trends or whatever you want and you'll still get the same result. This isn't me talking down on No Man's Sky, I just want to use it as an example that every player goes to. It's common for 99% of games to peak on release and never get close to that peak again. Yeah, maybe there's an increase in player count with updates or even sales, but it never actually beats that first initial day one peak. Now, as with most rules, there are always some exceptions. The first exception is very small indie games that happen to be hidden gems. These games are very good games, but because they came from a small indie team, maybe they didn't have the right budget to advertise, who really knows? They just didn't get noticed on day one, which resulted in getting a very small player base. Among Us was exactly this. It was released in November 2018 and the average players was 2.3 with a peak player of 19. But all of a sudden it gets noticed for whatever reason and boom, loads more players are playing the game, allowing the game company to hit a higher peak and even higher average player number, which is so much better than what it did do on day one. Unfortunately, Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't fall within this category. The other exception is long-term games, which does get continuous updates. Normally these are online games because they have a social element. GTA is a perfect example. Rockstar Games released a statement at the beginning of 2020 talking about their record-breaking year in 2019. They broke records for daily, weekly, and even monthly average players in July and August, which was following the Diamond Casino and Resort update. In December, they launched the Diamond Casino Heist, which broke even those records, bringing players back in bigger numbers than they've ever had before in a holiday period. And we could argue that Cyberpunk does somewhat fit within this category, being a AAA game and also open world game, as both GTA and Cyberpunk is there. But unfortunately this is GTA Online, and online games that have been well made hold players' attention a lot longer than a single player game that has also been well made. So Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't really fit in this category as well. So when looking at data, it is extremely unlikely those players' numbers will ever come back to Cyberpunk. But to be honest, they don't really need to come back for Cyberpunk to survive. If CD Projekt Red does fix those main issues, deliver some decent content being free and paid, they could still be a very profitable company. But anyway, that is all the information I have on this topic. I've gone through all the different types of patches that CD Projekt Red are pushing, the types of updates that we can see within 2021, even going as far as talk about multiplayer and also comparing it to other games that have been hugely successful. Now the big question is, do you think Cyberpunk has a good looking future, or do you think they've messed everything up? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you do want to talk more in depth about this subject, then as said at the beginning, I am streaming over on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Head over to there, drop a follow, and you'll be notified the next time I go live. Anyway guys, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going. So see ya.